On a quiet afternoon in 2011, David Potts walked along the rugged coastline of Maui with his girlfriend, expecting nothing more than a scenic afternoon by the water. Witnesses later said he was seen dancing near a strange opening in the volcanic rock, just inches from the edge, playing in bursts of spray that shot into the sky like a geyser. Then, in a matter of seconds, he vanished. No scream, no splash, anyone could clearly recall. Just a man who was there one moment and gone the next. He was never found. What David had wandered too close to wasn't a wave or a rip current. It was something far stranger and, in many ways, far more terrifying. A blowhole, a geological trapdoor in the ocean that can swallow a person whole and never give them back. His story is a brutal reminder that the ocean doesn't need teeth or venom to kill you. Sometimes it just needs geography, pressure, and a moment of carelessness. Today we're diving into the 10 worst phenomena the ocean has to offer. The creatures, forces, and freak formations that turn a peaceful day at the beach into a nightmare. Some of these will surprise you. Some of them are hiding in plain sight, disguised as rocks, flowers, or harmless-looking bubbles. By the end of this list, you'll never look at the shoreline the same way again. Let's start with the blowhole that took David Potts, because it deserves the top spot for sheer unpredictability. Blowholes form when sea caves grow landward and upward until they become vertical shafts exposed to the surface. When powerful waves force seawater into these narrow shafts under intense hydraulic compression, the water is violently expelled through the opening at the top, creating a spray that looks exactly like a geyser, which is why blowholes are sometimes called marine geysers. The height of that spray depends on the shape of the cave, the tides, and the swell conditions, but some blowholes, like the massive one in Kiama, Australia, can shoot water up to 82 feet into the air, drenching tourists who gather nearly 1 million strong every year just to watch. Mexico's La Bufadora sends spray up to 100 feet skyward every 13 to 17 seconds, a rhythm so consistent that crowds can literally time their photos to it. But the danger isn't the spray, it's the suction. If a person is pulled into a blowhole during the intake phase, their odds of survival are close to zero. Compare that to a tsunami, where even a 3-foot wave still leaves you some chance of survival. A blowhole gives you almost none. There are no warning signs at most of these sites, and the rocks around them are notoriously slippery, which is likely what happened to David Potts. The ocean didn't chase him, he simply got too close to a hole in the earth that was doing exactly what it was designed to do. What makes blowholes especially cruel is the way they lure people closer instead of warning them away. Most dangerous natural phenomena announce themselves somehow, but a blowhole looks like entertainment, a rhythmic burst of spray, the roar of trapped air escaping, mist catching sunlight into little rainbows. Tourists queue up for photos with their backs to the hole, unaware that the same hydraulic force pushing water skyward can, under the right wave conditions, reverse and pull with startling suction as water rushes back into the shaft to refill it. Local guides in places like Kiama and La Bufadora will tell you nearly every serious incident involves someone climbing over a barrier for a better photo. Geologists have also found that blowholes aren't static. The constant hydraulic hammering widens the shaft and weakens surrounding rock over years, meaning edges that seemed safe a decade ago might now be crumbling and unstable, giving way without warning. Next, we have to talk about a fish, so well disguised it might be resting under your foot right now. Meet the stonefish, sometimes called Sinensia, the most venomous fish known to science. Its gray, lumpy, mottled skin makes it almost indistinguishable from an actual rock, especially through fogged-up snorkel goggles or murky water. Stonefish are typically found in coral reefs across the tropical Pacific and Indian Oceans, though some species live in rivers. When disturbed, needle-like spines on its dorsal fin stand upright and inject venom directly into whatever touched it, usually an unlucky swimmer's foot. And here's the terrifying part. You don't even need to be in the water to get hurt. Stonefish can survive out of water for up to 24 hours, meaning one could be lying on dry sand waiting for you to step on it. Victims describe the sting as one of the most excruciating experiences imaginable, capable of causing infection, shock, and even paralysis. Strangely enough, despite its horrifying reputation, the stonefish is actually edible. Heat breaks down its venom, and once the dorsal spines are removed, it's sometimes served raw as sashimi in parts of Asia. It's a fish that can kill you slowly with agony or become dinner, depending entirely on who's handling it. Medical researchers rank stonefish stings among the most agonizing injuries a human being can survive. Some survivors have described the pain as so severe they beg doctors to amputate the affected limb just to make it stop, even though amputation is almost never necessary. The venom attacks the cardiovascular system, causing blood pressure to swing wildly and, in severe untreated cases, the heart to fail. Anti-venom exists and has dramatically cut fatalities in places like Australia, but access in remote coastal regions isn't guaranteed. Even experienced divers who have spent decades in reef environments still report placing a hand or knee inches from a stonefish without noticing it. because the very camouflage that makes it dangerous also makes it nearly impossible to consciously avoid. If the stonefish is nature's landmine, the blue-ringed octopus is its loaded pistol. This creature looks like something pulled from a science fiction film. Small, only 5 to 8 inches including its arms, but armed with enough venom to potentially harm as many as 26 adult humans within minutes. Found across the Pacific and Indian Oceans from Japan to Australia, blue-ringed octopuses typically live in coral reefs, rocky seafloors, and tide pools, hiding in shells, crevices, and marine debris. They are not naturally aggressive. In fact, their first instinct when threatened is to flee. It's only when they're cornered, provoked, or picked up that they become dangerous, flashing bright yellow and electric blue rings across their bodies as a final warning before biting. That bite delivers a neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, and it often goes completely unnoticed at first. Victims can experience dizziness, loss of motor control, and eventually full paralysis. The most chilling detail is that the toxin doesn't necessarily knock you unconscious. Some victims remain fully alert and aware of everything happening around them, while their body simply refuses to move, unable to call for help, unable to signal distress, trapped inside themselves while help walks right past. What makes tetrodotoxin especially frightening is that there is no known anti-venom for it anywhere in the world. The only treatment is supportive care, keeping a victim's airway open and heart beating, sometimes on a ventilator, until the toxin gradually clears on its own, a process that can take hours. The bite itself is often nearly painless, sometimes felt as nothing more than a faint pinprick, so victims frequently don't realize they've been bitten until paralysis begins creeping in minutes later. Children are especially at risk because the octopus's small size and bright rings make it look like a toy rather than a living animal, and tide pools, a favorite spot for curious kids, are exactly where it's most often found. Sticking with things that look far too pretty to be dangerous, let's talk about the flower urchin, officially crowned the most dangerous sea urchin in the 2014 Guinness World Records. These urchins live throughout the tropical Indo-West Pacific, scattered across coral reefs, rocks, sand, and seagrass beds at depths reaching nearly 300 feet. Instead of relying purely on spines like most urchins, flower urchins deliver venom through claw-shaped structures called pedicellariae, which resemble tiny pink and yellowish white flowers with a purple center. These little flowers sit on sensors that detect movement, and the moment something brushes against them, they snap shut instantly and begin pumping venom. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Those flower-shaped claws can actually detach from the urchin's body, remain stuck to your skin, and continue injecting venom for hours after the initial contact, long after you thought the danger had passed. The venom contains compounds capable of causing severe pain, muscle weakness, and breathing difficulty, an unusually potent cocktail for an animal that spends its entire life rooted to the reef floor. Because flower urchins often sit half buried in sand, they're easy to miss. And unlike a stonefish, their soft, colorful appearance actively invites curiosity rather than caution. Divers have reported reaching out to examine what looked like a strange, beautiful coral formation, only to realize seconds later, as burning pain set in, that they had touched a flower urchin instead, and thanks to those detachable claws, the danger travels with them long after the hand pulls away. Now let's move from things hiding on the seafloor to something floating right at the surface, the blue sea dragon. Usually no bigger than a grape, this brilliant blue sea slug looks almost too delicate and beautiful to be a threat, which is exactly the trap. Blue sea dragons feed on the Portuguese man-of-war, a jellyfish whose venom is potent enough to paralyze small fish and crustaceans. Rather than being harmed by this, the sea dragon uses mucus to neutralize the man-of-war's stinging cells, then steals those cells outright, storing and concentrating them within its own tissue. When it releases them on contact with your skin, the resulting sting is actually more powerful than the jellyfish it stole from in the first place. These creatures are also masters of disguise, floating upside down so their vivid blue bellies blend into the shimmering water while their gray backs camouflage them from predators looking up from below. Even when they wash ashore broken apart, since their soft bodies rarely survive the surf intact, the venom inside them remains just as dangerous as ever. The Portuguese man-of-war itself deserves a mention, since the blue sea dragon's whole survival strategy is borrowed from it. Despite looking like a single jellyfish, it's actually a colonial organism, a floating gas-filled bladder that catches the wind like a sail, paired with tentacles trailing more than 30 feet below the surface. Those tentacles keep stinging for days after the animal has died and washed ashore, which is why beach patrols routinely close stretches of coastline after a mass stranding, sometimes called a man-of-war bloom. Detached tentacle fragments, just a few inches long, can be nearly invisible against wet sand, and stepping on one barefoot delivers the same whip-like sting as touching the full animal. Few creatures on this list carry a reputation as chilling as the box jellyfish, named for its distinct cube-shaped bell. Found throughout the Indian and Pacific Oceans, this jellyfish can grow up to 10 feet long, trailing tentacles armed with roughly 500,000 microscopic stinging harpoons. Unlike most jellyfish that simply drift and wait, box jellyfish actively hunt, wrapping their tentacles around prey or unsuspecting swimmers with startling speed. Experts warn that you should stay away even if you spot a single detached tentacle floating alone, since it can still deliver a sting without the rest of the animal attached. Related to the box jellyfish, but far smaller, is the urchin jellyfish, found primarily around Australia. It's roughly the size of a human thumbnail, which makes it nearly impossible to spot in open water. During stinger season, which runs from November through May, entire beaches across Australia shut down because of these nearly invisible threats. Its venom causes what's known as urchin syndrome, a delayed and agonizing reaction involving severe muscle pain, vomiting, and dangerously elevated blood pressure that can take 20 to 30 minutes to even begin, long after the swimmer has already left the water thinking they're fine. A severe box jellyfish sting can, in the worst cases, cause cardiac arrest within minutes, faster than help can realistically arrive, which is why northern Australian coastal communities keep vinegar stations right on the sand, since vinegar deactivates any unfired stinging cells still clinging to the skin. Urchin syndrome is frightening precisely because of its delay. A swimmer might feel only a faint prickle, dismiss it, and head to lunch, only to be doubled over in cramps an hour later with no obvious link in their mind to the ocean they left behind. Doctors treating it describe patients experiencing impending doom syndrome, an overwhelming sense they're about to die, a symptom so consistent that emergency rooms in northern Queensland use it as a diagnostic clue. Let's shift gears now to something that doesn't bite or sting at all, but has proven just as capable of killing: the sneaker wave. These are oversized, unpredictable coastal waves that strike with no visible warning, and they've become especially notorious along the coastline of Oregon, where at least 17 people have been swept into the ocean since the year 2000. In 2011, the danger became so widely recognized that a memorial statue was built honoring 2 teenagers killed by sneaker waves. What makes these waves so uniquely dangerous is that, unlike a massive incoming wave you can see building from a distance, sneaker waves form close to shore, often within a window of just 10 to 20 minutes between otherwise normal smaller waves, giving beachgoers almost no time to react. They can surge more than 150 feet beyond the normal foam line, dragging sand and gravel with them, and they're especially common on steep coastlines rather than beaches with a gentle slope. Scientists haven't even classified sneaker waves as a distinct wave type the way they have with tsunamis or rogue waves, largely because so little formal research exists on them. What we do know is that they're fueled by offshore storms, which transfer wind energy into the water. That energy travels ahead of the storm and slams into the coast, even during periods of otherwise calm weather, catching people completely off guard, sometimes on a day that looks perfectly safe. In 2010, this played out publicly when a crowd gathered to watch the Mavericks surfing competition in California. Without warning, 2 enormous waves broke over the seawall and injured more than 10 spectators who thought they were standing at a safe distance. There's also a secondary killer hiding inside every sneaker wave incident: cold water shock. Along coastlines like Oregon's, ocean temperatures rarely climb much above the 50s, even in summer, and when a sneaker wave suddenly pulls someone fully clothed into that cold water, the body responds with an involuntary gasp reflex that can cause them to inhale water immediately, along with a spike in heart rate that has triggered fatal cardiac events even in young, healthy victims. Heavy winter clothing and boots soak through instantly, adding weight that drags a struggling swimmer downward. And rescue teams note that victims are often pulled under not by the wave itself, but by the undertow that follows as it retreats. Beyond sneaker waves lies an even broader danger that claims lives every single year: the rip current. Unlike a wave that pushes you toward shore, a rip current is a narrow, fast-moving channel of water pulling directly away from the beach, sometimes reaching speeds of up to 8 feet per second, faster than even a strong swimmer can fight against. Rip currents form when waves push large volumes of water toward the shore, and that water needs to find a way back out to sea, carving a channel through gaps in sandbars or near structures like piers and jetties. They're notoriously difficult to spot from the beach, sometimes appearing as a strange patch of calmer, choppier, or discolored water between breaking waves, which, ironically, can make them look like the safest place to swim. The real danger isn't the current pulling you under, it's panic. Swimmers exhaust themselves trying to swim directly against the current back to shore, when the safer move is to swim parallel to the beach until they're free of the pull. Rip currents are responsible for the vast majority of ocean rescues performed by lifeguards worldwide. And in places without lifeguard supervision, they're one of the leading causes of drowning deaths at unguarded beaches. Oceanographers note a cruel irony here too. Piers and jetties, built to make swimming areas feel safer, actually tend to intensify rip currents right alongside them, meaning some of the most popular, most photographed swimming spots at any beach are statistically among the most dangerous places to enter the water. Returning to the reptile world, sea snakes deserve their place on this list, and not just because there are 69 identified species swimming through the tropical and subtropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Scientists split them into two categories: true sea snakes, which spend nearly their entire lives at sea, and sea kraits, which can also move onto land. You can tell them apart from ordinary land snakes by their tails. Sea snakes have a flat, paddle-like tail built for swimming. Since none of them have gills, every sea snake must surface periodically to breathe, which is exactly when swimmers are most likely to encounter one unexpectedly. Most sea snakes carry more potent venom than a cobra or rattlesnake, but bites on humans remain rare because they generally only attack when provoked or accidentally touched. Sea snakes also hold a strange biological distinction. They're the only reptiles known to give birth directly in the ocean, with most species retaining their eggs internally and delivering nearly fully formed young while still swimming, the sole exception being the yellow-lipped sea krait, which comes ashore specifically to lay its eggs. Fishermen are actually far more likely to encounter sea snakes than swimmers, since the snakes are often hauled up accidentally in nets, and bites in this context account for a disproportionate share of documented cases. A sea snake bite can be almost painless at first, sometimes described as feeling like nothing more than a scratch, which has led to tragic delays in seeking treatment. Even so, divers who encounter sea snakes in open water often describe the experience as more curious than threatening, with the snakes swimming alongside them briefly before moving on. No list of oceanic dangers would be complete without the lion's mane jellyfish, one of the largest jellyfish species on the planet. Preferring cold water, these jellyfish are most commonly found in the Arctic, the northern Atlantic, and the northern Pacific, though sightings have occurred as far south as the British Isles. Their long, hair-like tentacles give the species its name and can stretch up to 10 feet, while their bell can reach over 7 feet in diameter in extreme cases. The largest lion's mane jellyfish ever documented was recorded in 1865 off the coast of Massachusetts, with tentacles measured at roughly 125 feet long, longer than a full-grown blue whale. With around 1,200 stinging tentacles trailing behind it, very few fish that wander into its reach manage to escape. For humans, a sting is rarely life-threatening, but it is intensely painful, and even a jellyfish that is already washed up dead on the beach can still deliver a sting to anyone careless enough to touch it. This jellyfish even earned a literary cameo, appearing in the Sherlock Holmes story The Adventure of the Lion's Mane. Because its massive tentacle network trails so far behind the bell, swimmers can encounter the stinging strands long before they see the jellyfish itself, sometimes swimming directly into a curtain of near-invisible tentacles extending many yards away. Each tentacle carries thousands of microscopic stinging capsules that fire on contact, regardless of whether the jellyfish is alive or already dead on the sand, which is why poking a beach lion's mane out of curiosity can still deliver a painful surprise hours later. Finally, we come to a phenomenon less about a single creature and more about the raw, chaotic power of the ocean itself, the rogue wave. For centuries, sailors described towering walls of water appearing suddenly out of calm seas, and for just as long, scientists largely dismissed these stories as exaggeration or folklore. That changed in 1995, when a wave measuring roughly 84 feet was recorded, striking the Dropner oil platform in the North Sea, a wave nearly twice the height of the surrounding sea state at the time. Rogue waves are now understood to form through a combination of factors, including converging ocean currents, storm systems, and constructive interference, where multiple smaller waves happen to align and combine into one massive, unpredictable surge. Unlike tsunamis, which are triggered by seismic activity and can sometimes be predicted with warning systems, rogue waves can appear on otherwise ordinary, moderately rough seas with almost no warning at all, capable of snapping ships in half or sweeping people clean off the decks of vessels that seemed perfectly safe moments before. Since the Dropner wave was confirmed, satellite radar data has revealed rogue waves are far more common than researchers ever assumed, and many maritime historians now believe a meaningful number of ships once written off as lost to ordinary storms were actually rogue wave victims, events violent enough to break a vessel apart without leaving a trace behind. Taken together, these phenomena tell a much bigger story than just an unlucky list of dangerous encounters. They reveal an ocean that hides its threats in plain sight, in the shape of a rock, the color of a flower, the calm patch between two waves, or a narrow crack in volcanic stone. The creatures on this list, the stonefish, the blue-ringed octopus, the flower urchin, the blue sea dragon, the box jellyfish, and the irukandji, rely on disguise and patience rather than aggression, waiting for a single careless touch. The forces on this list, sneaker waves, rip currents, blowholes, and rogue waves, don't even need biology at all, just physics, pressure, and timing, working against anyone unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong moment. What connects every single story here, from David Potts vanishing into a blowhole on Maui to the teenagers memorialized on the Oregon coast, is how ordinary the moments were right before disaster struck. Nobody walks onto a beach expecting it to be their last. So the next time you're standing at the edge of the shore, watching the waves roll in and thinking about how peaceful the ocean looks, remember that peaceful is often exactly what it wants you to think. Respect the warning signs, respect the locals who know these waters best, and never, ever turn your back on the sea.